Hello, Dani. Thank you so much for joining me for one of my Compassionate Women's Health Community Adenomyosis Awareness Month interviews.
Thank you so much, Belinda, for having me. I feel really honoured to be here today to share a bit about my experience and my story.
It's so important to get stories out there, isn't it? It's for others to hear that they're not alone. I'm just going to give a formal introduction to Dani. So Dani Nicole was born and raised in Canberra, Australia. Although Dani experienced serious health concerns from the age of 15, she pursued her dream of becoming a psychologist, completing a Bachelor of Psychology with honours at the Australian National University. Dani then completed the qualification requirements and commenced working as a psychologist. She gained experience in various areas, including vocational rehabilitation, counselling, and clinical support within the foster care industry before transiting into private practice. Dani loved engaging with her clients. In particular, she found private practice extremely rewarding and felt honoured to support clients to be able to live their best lives. Dani was blessed to have 2 children with her former husband before she experienced serious gynecological health issues. Although Dani was forced to cease private practice in 2016 due to severe pain and health concerns, she has maintained her strong desire and dream to support others, especially those with chronic health and pain conditions. Dani now lives with her unconditionally loving and supportive partner, Adrian, and their 3 children and 3 dogs in Canberra. Dani has always found writing to be a creative outlet for her life experiences. Follow Dani on her socials, where she shares her experiences, insights, and wisdom on her Facebook and Insta pages, Dani Nicole Becoming Your Own Ocean, and join Dani as she raise awareness and knowledge of gynecological health and chronic pain conditions. So I feel honoured to be having a chat with you today. So would you kindly share your story and how it relates to adenomyosis for us, please?
Yeah, thank you so much, Belinda. So I think that I struggled with gynecological issues probably from very early on, actually, when I first started to menstruate, I had really severe pain from the get-go. It was really, really overwhelmingly difficult each month. The pain was excruciating. And look, I was put onto the oral contraceptive pill very early as a way of trying to manage my cycle and the pain that I was experiencing. And I was on that for years and years and years, just kind of went along, and that managed it fairly well until, and I had some other health issues along the way, but I'm just focused today on more of the gynecological stuff for the benefit of the topic that we're exploring. But when I was in 2013, so when I was about 32, I developed pelvic pain just out of the blue. No real trigger that I was aware of. I'd had my 2 children by then. I was, as you mentioned, I was working in private practice, loving what I was doing. I had 2 young children, so very busy time, but just developed, and it was almost like an annoying niggle at first of period pain that most women would have experienced. And it was just unusual because I actually had a marina in at the time. And so I wasn't really supposed to be experiencing period pain because I wasn't having those cycles. So I did get it checked out after a little while. They ended up thinking it was a cyst on my ovary, which ended up bursting. And then they kind of just said, oh, look, you should be right now. But it continued to get worse and worse. And it went from being this kind of annoying niggle that some Nurofen might help, and just let me get on with the rest of my day kind of thing. And then it became 24/7 pain that was with me every minute of the day, every single day. And it was agony. It was just the worst experience of pain that I'd ever had. And I kept working for about 18 months with that. I felt, that I wanted to, for myself, my clients, my family, financially.
Yeah.
It was necessary as well.
Yeah.
And I started investigating, going to doctors upon doctors upon doctors. And for a couple of years, I was, apart from my GP, I was really dismissed by a lot of the gynecologists that I attended. And I really felt misunderstood. I didn't feel like I was heard. I even was literally ignored in a doctor's appointment with a doctor who was fixated on looking at his calendar for the entire time I was sitting there. And I remember I was crying my eyes out in agony, and he just told me that there was nothing wrong with me apart from chronic pain, and I needed to stop taking any medication to help that. And I was just mortified. So it took me several attempts to seek a gynecologist that would actually listen. When I thought I found someone, they would then kind of palm me off to another person, or no, we've gone far enough. I was thrown into the chronic pain basket pretty early on, which is just, it felt like that was where you go when it's too hard for anybody to be able to help you. And I needed the pain management, absolutely, because there was nothing that was helping. But I needed to understand what was wrong. I knew there was something not right. I had to keep persevering to find somebody that believed me. And interestingly enough, one of the early scans that I had in late 2013 actually queried adenomyosis, and all the doctors just went, no, that wouldn't be causing you this much pain. No, doesn't really fit the picture. And I, was quite aware of endometriosis. They actually thought that's what I had originally. It fit the criteria really well, my symptoms. And I had a laparoscopy done in late 2014, and they said, no, we don't believe it is. And we just don't really know where to go from here. It wasn't endometriosis. See a women's health physio, things like that. So I did all of those things.
So when you had the laparoscopy, was that with an endometriosis specialist, or was it a general gynecologist?
It was a gynecologist that did have specialty in endo, but I don't think they missed endometriosis. It was just difficult that as soon as we got to that point, they were like, we don't know what else to do for you. And it was just this isolating experience. And even my former husband couldn't understand how devastated I was to hear the words, well, no, you don't have endometriosis. Not because I wanted a disease. Nobody wants that. But if I had an answer, then I had a path that I could go on. I could look at what would help that. It could potentially have treatment. And it was just devastating. And I just had to keep going and going and going. Eventually, I got put onto another gynecologist who was happy to pick up where someone else left off in terms of doing a menopause trial with hormone injections. And that was a 6-month trial, injection each month. And if it was to be found to be effective, from the get-go, the understanding was, if this works, it means that you will need to have a hysterectomy. So I, went in with that knowledge. I was desperate to find some way of continuing to function, because I was not living. I was surviving, but there is in no way I was living for many, many years through this. And I didn't believe that this treatment would work, because I'd been on so many different medications. They'd messed with my hormones before.
Mm.
We'd gone down so many different paths before this. As you would, it's a really serious, form of treatment to undergo, especially at 30, what would I have been at the time, 33?
Yeah.
It was, that's quite frightening at that age to be, they're like, we're putting you in a trial menopause. It's like, what?
Yeah.
So I actually really didn't have a lot of hope with that particular treatment. But after a few months, it was the first time I had some pain relief in years that actually helped. And because that continued, it was also suggested that I needed to have my ovaries both removed because they were concerned. My gynecologist at the time was concerned I would continue to have cyclical pain if I left my ovaries.
Okay.
And in the end, I agreed to have the hysterectomy. It was, one of the most difficult decisions of my life.
Yeah, I bet.
I still wanted to have more children. I was blessed with the 2 children I have, but I always wanted a big family and I wanted more children. It was always part of my picture in my mind. So to decide to have the hysterectomy, I did it for my kids. I did it to in the hope of trying to salvage my marriage, which had been in tatters by this point. And the taking both ovaries, I spent months back and forwards in my mind trying to figure out what the best answer was for me. And ultimately it was sort of decided in my last doctor's appointment with the specialist. He said, I think you need both removed, and that's what happened. I didn't even see him on the day of the surgery, actually, so there was no opportunity for me to change my mind. I woke up and it was done. And it was it was a really, really difficult time.
I bet.
And the symptoms of being in menopause hit me within 3 days.
Wow.
And so they put me on HRT 3 days afterwards, and I've been on it ever since. So that's and then it was with obviously doing a biopsy of my uterus. The specialist confirmed that I did in fact have a serious, significant amount of adenomyosis. And this is, after years of being told, no, there's nothing wrong. No, adenomyosis wouldn't be the problem. No, you've just got chronic pain now and you have to manage that. There was actually a disease there. I felt like none of the pain management worked through the chronic pain side of things because there was a diseased uterus in there that needed to be.
The source of the pain was still there.
Absolutely. So all the things that they tried, and they did try a lot. My pain specialist did everything under the sun that I could. I had electronic TENS machine put in my spine to try and give me benefit from that. And it was like, it was a temporary situation, but quite drastic. I had a couple of different nerve blocks to block the pain, and loads and loads of different medications. And I just felt that I knew there was something going on, that it wasn't.
You just know in your gut, don't you? Like, we're our own best.
We know our body's best. And I was, I guess, grateful that I have the personality that I have, in that I can be assertive and I can speak up for myself and I can keep pushing. Whereas I know there are many people with these sort of conditions in particular, as well as in other instances as well, where you just don't feel that you have the ability to use your voice. And that is one of the reasons, one of the primary reasons that I do actually share my story, and am very open with all of what I've gone through. Once I, had that treatment, I actually, found my pain was had improved exponentially after a few months, and I should have waited longer, but I went back to work because I wanted to. I also needed to. And then it was about 7 months after the hysterectomy, and I'd been cleared to, basically get back to life as normal. I was still on some pain meds, but much less than what I was, and they were actually helping. And we noticed I was getting a bit more pain for about a month, and we just put it down to my doctor and I, just that I was doing more, being more active, that, so we kind of went, okay, just you might need a little bit more pain management at the moment, just as your body adjusts. And then I had a very, very rare complication happen as a result of, this is post hysterectomy. It wouldn't have happened, obviously, if I hadn't had the hysterectomy, but it wasn't because there was the surgeon had done anything wrong. The surgery was done fine. It was not, it wasn't caused by anyone in particular, but I was playing netball, which I'd been cleared to do. So I was actually, really getting my life back.
Yeah.
And suddenly I just felt this awful, a weight drop in my pelvic area, screamed for my sister to get me to the bathroom, and I did not even know what it was that I was looking at. Long story short, it was 60 centimeters of my small bowel actually had prolapsed from my vagina.
Wow.
After the vaginal vault, which is where the uterus is removed, and at the top of the vagina is where it's sort of stitched, and that had ruptured, and this mass that was about the size of a rock melon was just hanging down my legs, and I was just mortified, traumatized, terrified. I had no idea what it was.
No.
I've never seen anything like it. I instinctively went, oh my gosh, this looks like it's going to snap. There was a part of the bowel I could see, and it was quite thin, was holding this mass up, and it was exceptionally heavy. And I ended up obviously getting an ambulance, and I had emergency surgery, but I was in the ER for about 5 hours waiting for a room. And I still, it's quite vivid, that experience. The pain was something I could not comprehend. Literally, my insides had ripped out, and that's what it felt like. It was absolutely awful. And it was scary. I didn't know, whether they could fix it, what would be the outcome of that. And I learned that really this hasn't happened to anybody else.
That's amazing.
So it meant that I think that was detrimental to them being able to help me in the best way possible, especially my gynecologist, who was the one that did the surgery, but had previously been my gynecologist, but I'd stopped seeing him because I wasn't happy with how he was managing things for me. But I didn't have a choice in the emergency room. And then I ended up in hospital for a month. I had to learn to walk again. I had a four-wheel wheelie walker for almost a year. And after that, I was using a walking stick for a number of years. And
is that because of the impact of the whole muscle area of the area?
I had no strength in there. And at the time, they couldn't really explain why. They're like,
Mm.
oh, it's ruptured, but, the tissue was thin, but we don't really know why it's happened. And as I said, because no one's experienced this before, they didn't have anybody to go off, no, guidance, no treatment plan.
You're rewriting the textbook.
And there was some instances where it was really, really poorly managed from the doctors. The nurses and midwives that looked after me were amazing. But some of the ways that I was treated in terms of trying to manage my pain, they seem to lack an understanding of how to treat someone who has chronic pain, who is dealing with an acute experience of pain. From my point of view, there was a lot of research out there that it tells you how to manage that. I didn't understand why, they were struggling with that. Thankfully, there were some really great doctors that did finally get on top of it, but it took a long time to get to see someone that understood what they needed to do to try and help me through that, to try and reduce the likelihood of ongoing pain later and things like that. But it was a very traumatizing experience, and sadly my marriage had broken down about 3 weeks before that happened. So and suddenly I was, a single mum. My whole world had just fallen apart.
Wow, what a tough time, Dani.
Yeah, it was very, very difficult. And it was really hard on my kids. They were very young, and I couldn't live with them for a number of months. I had to be cared for, even when I left hospital. So then it was just one step at a time, very, very slow recovery. And as I said, it took years and years to be able to stop using a walking stick, and it comes back occasionally depending on flare-ups and whatnot. But to sort of move forward again a little bit further, I started to build up my strength, and things were going quite well in terms of just dealing with the marriage breakdown and sorting out things regarding the kids, etc. And then I started having some more prolapses of small bladder prolapses, and I kept going to the emergency room and was really, again, just dismissed. They used a pessary ring to hold things in place, because they were at this point I was seeing the gynecologist who'd done my emergency surgery. Just because he'd done it, it seemed logical to continue to talk to him. But he was very I don't know how to put it, but he was, if he didn't come up with a plan, he didn't really want to explore it. It had to be from him, and he said, oh, look, we don't want you to have any more surgery at this time, it's too fragile. And I didn't either, but I kept going to the emergency room, and occasionally he was the doctor in there, and they still just kind of dismissed it and went, no, we don't need to do anything, nothing major. But every time it caused a huge amount of pain. And in the end, I was in hospital again. I'd been admitted for like 5 or 6 days, and was informed by one of the registrars that my specialist had said that I should just never have had a hysterectomy. And that was a really awful thing to hear.
Yeah, because that's something you can undo. That's really insensitive. It was a major decision for you.
And it was actually helpful. It did, help. There was benefit of it, and yes, to have someone dismiss the challenge of making that decision was really, really difficult to hear. And I understand why his registrar told me. She really wanted me to see someone else that would look at my case, that had more experience in prolapses. And I mean, from my point of view, I was already wanting to do that, so she didn't need to say it. But the fact that she did, you know, she was looking out for me, and I appreciated that. Saw this other gynecologist who said that what had happened previously with my vault rupture was actually going to happen again. The tissue had thinned out again entirely, and I urgently needed to get to Sydney to see a specialist up there who was the only person she viewed that could actually help with the situation as it was, because of how complex it was. So I did go up and see him, and he agreed that, yeah, the rupture would happen again. So I had to have, in 2017, so I didn't mention, but I had the hysterectomy in 2015. 2016, in May was when I had the emergency surgery. And then February 2017 is when I had the next major surgery, which is a sacrocolpopexy anterior and, I've written it down so I can, anterior and posterior repair. So basically it was, I see it as an internal reconstruction, and in which they use the surgical mesh, which some people in the women's health world will know of the surgical mesh, and some of the drama that has occurred with that in Australia as well as overseas. It was actually one particular mesh, I believe, that's really problematic. So they used a different one, obviously, for me. But there were still complications that were potentially going to be part of the recovery and the surgery. And I just had to make, again, another decision where it was either I ended up in hospital every week or two with a prolapse, or I go and do this and try and save my life and try and get my life back on track to have with my kids. So for me, it was, there wasn't really a choice. This is what I had to do.
Yeah.
And so I did, and he did an amazing job. It was an extremely difficult recovery, but he did what he needed to do, and he, you know, repaired it in the best way. And he was just an amazing surgeon and specialist. And I viewed that he saved my life. Amazing. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to be, you know, put in contact with him when I was. So, and again, you know, I was, you know, using a wheelie walker and a walking stick for a long time after. Couldn't drive for a year. Took a long time really to recover from that one. And, you know, for the most part, that's held things together. But I'm restricted from a lot of different things now due to the fact that they put it down to just some genetic issue with the internal tissues that I have. And that's why it's happened. It just, the tissue inside does not heal for me. It doesn't create the tissue bonding that you would expect, and that's why it happened. And you know, it's just unfortunate that I had to have the hysterectomy and the other surgeries, because then it created a situation where it needed to heal, and it just had never been able to. It's a very fragile, I suppose, space now. It's still something I have to be conscious of in terms of what activities I do, how much of certain things I do. And sometimes I get a little bit complacent, I must admit, when I'm just trying to live my life with my kids and my family. And then I get some reminders in different ways that I need to, you know, just be a bit more conscious of taking things easy in certain instances in particular.
What a lesson. What a way to.
Oh, yeah, certainly one way of doing it. And it certainly does, definitely tells me, to pay attention to my body, to listen to my body, to not dismiss the messages that I get from my body. So more than ever, I pay attention to that. And that's been, a really important part of my journey.
I'm curious how much your own kind of studies and understanding of, psychology helped with your own, I guess it's hard to be the patient, but, your understanding of how the mind works and how you process things. Did you find that helped you move through the mental health side of things?
I think that there was certainly some elements that definitely did help. So I was trying to fix the light. The lighting's a bit poor where I'm sitting now that we're doing it on the phone. But I will admit that I reached a point after many years of dealing with the pain where I recognised that I needed to go and speak to my own psych. I can do so much for myself, and yes, I've got loads of strategies and skills and techniques and insight and understanding, and all of that's important and can help me. But when it came to the severity of this situation and how it impacted every domain in my life, I chose to go find someone to talk to help me through that. Oh, absolutely. As a psychologist, we're not removed from having either mental health issues or just generally experience situations like this, and we benefit from the support of someone as well, just giving that different perspective.
I mean, it probably helped you to have the awareness, hang on, now it's actually time for me to go and get that help.
Absolutely. And to know, what I needed to utilize with that help, what I needed to get from it. So me being able to know that helped me be able to, choose who to go talk to, what I wanted to address, what support I needed put in place. And it was important for many reasons because of what ended up being quite a tumultuous time when my marriage broke down and had the emergency surgery and, single mum all of a sudden, just massive. And so having that support of someone through that period was really, really vital.
Definitely, because it really goes to show that even though there's something happening physically within the body, that mind-body connection is it's inseparable. Like the impact is on each other, like the feedback back and forth.
Absolutely. The connection is what keeps us going, and we cannot dismiss that connection. It is vital for us to kind of thrive as human beings, I believe, to have that knowledge and understanding of the mind, body, spirit connection, whether you call it spirit, soul. Just for me, it's that connection of those three different entities is what keeps us going and what makes us, a really unique animal species. So, I think having that understanding and exploring that connection is, just a wonderful experience to do, whether you're having something severe like this occurring or just from a day-to-day point of view. Being able to understand that connection and how they impact each other and how you can impact them as well. And I loved working with people because of that reason. It's just I was drawn to it from a very young age because I'd had an experience with a psychologist when I was young, going through some of my own things. And I just wanted, it was part of it was deeply part of who I was from a young age that this is what I wanted to explore, and being able to support others to achieve their goals and to achieve the life that they want to live.
Nice. So what, out of all those experiences and the people that you've interacted with, what were some of the kindest and most helpful supports or words, or, you know, like things that people did for you that helped you through?
Yeah, so I think that there were different moments in time that certain people helped me through, and some of those people came into my life for a short time, did something in particular at that time with me, supported me in some way, and some of them have come and passed through, and others have stuck around. And that that's a lesson in itself, to understand that people are coming to our lives often for a reason, and sometimes that's for a long time, and sometimes it's for a short time. So I've had people that for instance, coming out of hospital after the emergency surgery, I had someone that came around and just helped me figure out which medications I needed to take and when, because they gave me, a box of medication and went, okay, now you've got to manage it at home. And so, this one friend of mine, she did up a spreadsheet for me, told me when I needed to have what. So that was, that's just a really easy example of something very practical. Being able to live with my mum for a number of months after I had my emergency surgery was a really valuable time that impacted our relationship in a really positive way. It was actually a really wonderful bonding experience, and she cared for me when I couldn't care for myself, and ensured that I got back on my feet. My specialist who did the reconstructive surgery, his kindness and his genuine desire to improve my life was obvious from the get-go. And when I went back to see him for a 6-week review, he held my hand, and I just told him that he'd literally saved my life, and I was in tears and he was in tears. And that was just, such a really precious moment that I'll remember forever, because he's like, he said, when you came in, when you told me your story, he said, I just wanted to help you.
Good.
And just those words, just so vital. I've had some really wonderful friends that I've become closer throughout this, and that's been really special as well. And then I'm always meeting new people like yourself. Just the journey keeps going. I'm in a different spot in the journey now than I have previously been, but it's a forever evolving situation, which that's life. And I enjoy being able to utilize what I've learned, utilize the wisdom that I've gained and the experiences to help support others.
So how are you doing that now? Because you've got in your bio about that. Tell me a little bit more about that, what you actually do.
Yeah, so my desire to help people has never changed. So even though I'm not working in private practice at the moment, being a psychologist is a big part of my identity and who I am. And it took a lot of sort of emotional work around not being able to do that job anymore, at least at this time. And it has been quite some time, and that's been really challenging because at the same time as my marriage ended, and so my identity as a wife, being in a couple, being a psychologist, doing my job, being with my kids, my entire identity was thrown up in the air, and I felt like I was just floating, and I was lost and alone, and no one could understand what that was like, because it was such a awful set of circumstances that happened all at the same time. And it really did force me into doing a lot of mental work around who I was as a person, and rather than who I was
those labels.
as a label. Yes, and as a role, and so that's been a really big part of my personal journey is exploring that, and I think that's an ever evolving experience that we have as we grow as individuals. And I learned so much about who I am and who I wanted to be in life, irrespective of the labels that I had. So I came to about it was last year, 2020, I decided to I have always written. I write as a form of processing for myself. I've shared some, I've had some, few small things published when I was younger. I've always just loved it as a way of expressing myself and really helping me through any difficult times. And I really started to write a lot as a teenager, and I've continued that. And so in late 2020, I just decided that I would like to try and share my experience a little bit more on a public in a public space, in the hope of supporting others that might be going through similar experiences that I have, or potentially another gynecological issue, or it might be pain, or it might be marriage breakdown, it might be becoming a single parent or being a single parent. There's been so many parts of my journey along the way and I've gained so much insight and understanding, and that combined with my professional knowledge and experience, and from being working with hundreds and hundreds of different people over my career, just has educated me so much about our mind, our bodies, our spirits, that connection that we talked about earlier, and understanding the connection and what we can do to help us live the best life we can by understanding that connection, and being aware of how to work with all of our body, our mind, all at the same time. So I started a Facebook page where I wanted to share parts of my story. And so I joined, a bunch of support groups which weren't sort of really around when I went through my hysterectomy, and really wish they had been. Wish I knew.
Generation now, isn't it?
Yes, and because I was left with little information. It wasn't common for women my age to be put into menopause, and I went into it blind. I'm not going to lie, I really did not know what to expect. Even with the trial, it's just to go from being 34 and just like any other 34-year-old to suddenly being in menopause for the rest of my life, was one of the hardest experiences. It certainly was the final straw of the end of my marriage. And I just want to try and stop that happening to someone else. I just want to be able to support others who might need to be making some of these choices, or who have had to make these choices, or just want someone who's gone through it to be able to listen to what they're going through. And so I decided to share some of the writing that I do on Facebook and Instagram. I take pictures as well, that sort of goes along with those things. And I continue to write. I've actually was really privileged to be part of a co-authored book that was published at the end of last year, and it is about women who have experienced adversity in their lives and how they have managed to deal with that and to overcome it. And I was really honoured to be asked to be a co-author of that, and so I had my chapter in there to share again my experiences to help raise awareness of these issues that are not really understood by so many people, and a disease that is really not heard of by most. It's great that we're getting traction on endometriosis, and that's so important. I'm really thrilled about that, and I want that to happen for adenomyosis as well.
That's right. Like, because I think it's thought of as being for older women. Like,
yes, it is.
How would you have that at your age? And it's like,
absolutely, that it is something that is really misunderstood.
Yeah.
I mean, for the doctors, the multiple doctors tell me it wouldn't cause the pain that it did, and in fact, absolutely did.
It's one of the main symptoms of adenomyosis.
Absolutely, and just to be arguing about this with doctors, literally to be heard. So I want others to feel like they are heard. So if that means like on one of the support groups that I'm part of online, that I'll send a message to them or respond to questions. So I do that often. Just if I've got something to add to someone's question or query, and some of them I've remained in contact with, and and that's really great. And it's just being that support person. I'm just hoping that what I write about and what I share helps raise awareness of these experiences and how they can impact people's lives, on so many levels. And so I'm actually have been writing about my experiences since about 2015, when which is when I started my menopause trial. And for quite some time I felt like I've wanted to do something with my story, and I actually I've started to write my book about my story. I've drafted about 9 chapters so far. So, I'm really looking forward to continuing putting that together. Again, just in the hope of raising awareness and understanding, and sharing the things that I've learned along the way. I've got an entire chapter about grief and just, and about losing identity and gaining identity and understanding that. And so lots of different chapters around these topics that have come up throughout this period of time that I want to be able to share with others. And I hope to be able to do, even more sort of work with people as time goes on, as I'm, just managing the different parts of my health. But it's always, something that I'm drawn to help in some way. Always just, and I just, people come to me and ask for support in lots of different areas, and I'm always happy to give it, no matter what it might be. I've done some beta reading for people that have written books, and I'll got other young people that'll come to me and ask for assistance with looking at their lives and what to explore, when they're looking at uni options or applications. So really, like my partner says to me, you've never stopped supporting people. You just do it in a different way now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a, a pretty fair thing to say. As I mentioned to you, this experience is sort of an ongoing. It's never going to end. As I mentioned, I had jaw surgery 2 weeks ago today, and that is, again, it's another flow-on effect of what my body's gone through over these many years, and I've ended up with an arthritic joint in my jaw, which they had to replace after many years of just trying to manage it. And that they've said they believe it's related to being in early onset menopause. And it's very much, there's just every day different symptoms that you're managing and dealing with, and some days are better than others, and I understand that so well. That's why I like to be able to support others as they're going along their journey, just so that they feel understood and not isolated like I did, because it was exceptionally difficult to go through, feeling isolated and alone.
And I think your book needs to have a chapter on resilience, because it sounds like you've really built up this understanding of how to face those day-to-day challenges, from the extreme that you faced in those medical conditions and incidents to these day-to-day like new challenges being thrown in relation to it. So
yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I couldn't agree more how important it is to share a story, and it's just so inspiring for others to see how you can pick yourself back up and recreate your life to be something of value that still fulfills you. So I'm really, really glad you came on and shared with us, and despite your jaw surgery. Thank you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I get really touched by the invite, and just really, so pleased that I'm able to share a bit about my journey and what I've learned along the way, and in the hopes that it will be able to help some others.
I'm sure it will. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them below when we post this video, and Dani or I will be able to just...
Oh, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to respond to any questions, and I'd love you guys to follow me on my socials.
We'll put the link. We'll put the link in.
That would be wonderful. Well. I've had a little bit of a break from socials over the last little bit while I've just gone through this health stuff, but I really enjoy writing and using that as a way of expressing and sharing, and providing support for others as they find, when I write different topics, I get lots of responses from people that find it useful, and I'll look forward to continuing to be able to do support people in that way.
It's so good to use social media for good.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you again, Dani.